It is a bright, sunny day here, but some people experience a change in mood when the days start to go dark. This time of year, especially as we get less and less daylight. If you have that feeling, you may have something called seasonal affect disorder. And here to help explain what this mysterious ailment is about is the Chief Medical Officer for Elements and Promises Treatment Centers. Please welcome Dr. David Sack. Welcome, Dr.
Thank you.
You really were a pioneer in this field. Let me just get on the same page so we all know what we're talking about here. The definition of seasonal affective disorder is what?
So seasonal affective disorder is a form of depression that typically starts in the fall as the days get shorter. And to make the diagnosis, someone has had to have had this pattern of depression for at least 2 years in a row. And unlike other more severe forms of depression, this one tends to involve more crying episodes, more fatigue, a sense of gloom, and other changes in their diet behavior where they start to gain weight and crave starches and sweets and things like that.
It's interesting. I used to call it SAD. And I don't know if that's nickname, but I thought, you know what, it's SAD disorder because I get sad when I don't have enough light, which is interesting, seasonal affective disorder. But are those the only symptoms? I mean, I kind of feel like that's just winter.
No.
You know? You just eat more and you gain a few pounds.
The problem with seasonal depression is that the people who have it don't necessarily understand that it's being triggered by the season. So what they experience is feelings of hopelessness and worthlessness, low energy. They feel profound fatigue. In other words, a sense that if they slept all day, it wouldn't be enough. And yet, even when they sleep all day, they feel tired. And
that's
feel
parenting.
rested.
That what you're talking about is parenting right there.
But do all of us have a little bit of it? I mean, mine clearly isn't that bad, but I feel like...
I do. I mean, I want to eat more carbs.
And I want to sleep more in the winter.
Yeah, I do.
I feel a little more tired.
So they came up with a name for the little bit of it. So they call that subsyndromal seasonal affective disorder.
Thank goodness we're not talking about that because I would have had to say that.
Exactly.
But what we think happens is that there are seasonal changes in certain hormones, melatonin and serotonin, that cause these changes in mood and energy. And probably normal people have some of those same changes. They're just not as pronounced and they're not as sensitive to them.
All right, so let's go back to SAD, though, and talk about that. Are we talking biological or are we talking psychological?
So when we started to study this, I had lived for 4 years in Buffalo, followed by 4 years in Chicago.
Oh, boy.
And I just knew I had to get away from all of it.
Yeah, talk about
living your research, huh?
Right. And there had been a theory that these were sort of anniversary reactions, that people were getting depressed at a certain time of year because they were remembering bad things that had happened to them at that time of year. The thing is that most people who have seasonal depression get depressed starting in the fall. They get depressed before any of the events that they might attribute it to. So we believe that it was biological, and we've since been able to show that it's really the biological aspects of it that drive it.
Are there certain people then that are more likely to suffer from something like this than others?
Absolutely. The only problem is we're not exactly sure who they are.
That's why it's called practicing medicine, not perfecting it. Right.
So we know that women are more vulnerable, and we don't know why, but about 4 times as many women will have seasonal affective disorder as men. Now, with depression, there's also a female predominance, but it's more on the order of 2 to 1, not 4 to 1. So and it may be that women, because of their menstrual cycles, are also more sensitive to circumannual cycles, in other words, cycles that go across the year.
So I'm just going to take a stab here at this. So when it gets darker sooner, this triggers this? Is it as simple as just going outside and being in the sun? I mean, how do you treat something? Is there a treatment? So
people often wonder if it's light, why does anybody get it? Because we have incandescent light in our houses, and so isn't that enough?
Right.
And the answer is that for light to have a biological effect, it needs 2 things. It has to have the full spectrum, and indoor lighting has very little of the blue, indigo, and violet, so it's not full spectrum. And then the second problem is brightness. When you go outside on a bright, sunny day, it's about 20,000 lux at eye level. It's just a measure of brightness. Okay. Whereas inside, it's 1,000. So outside is 20 times brighter than ordinary room lighting. So it's just not enough to accomplish the task.
All right, so you're basically saying if you're inside and you're having these feelings of like depression and sadness, go outside and look up?
Well, the problem is that one of the hormones that we think causes seasonal depression is our signal for night. So that's something called melatonin, and it goes up at around 10 o'clock at night, and it stays high, and then it gradually comes down in the morning. And what happens as the days get shorter is that melatonin gets wider and wider. So if you go out in the middle of the day, you're not suppressing any of that melatonin because it's not up. So not only do you have to go outside if you're going to use natural lighting, but you have to get up early to go outside, which if you have seasonal depression is not likely to happen.
Wow.
Oh, goodness.
So I'm looking across here. I love light. As a photographer, I'm always interested in light. These are interesting lights that you have here. What are they?
So these are full spectrum Vitalites. Can you turn them on for me? Sure.
Wow.
So
that's bright.
One of the things that makes them different is that they have the blue that I was talking about. And we have done studies now that show that blue light is singularly effective. But we're not ready to give up all the rest of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So these are full spectrum Vitalites, and they're much brighter than ordinary table lamps. So they're about 10,000 lux. So they're not quite as bright as being outside, but if you sit 3 feet from them, you're going to get enough of a dose that in a half hour you're going to start to feel better.
But you're not supposed to look directly into them.
No, usually we tell people to read or to have a TV set, off to the side and not look directly into
Because I think I may have blinded myself.
And how much of
Stop
that
that.
do we need? How much do we need of that? And then will you be better do it throughout the winter?
So we think that at the very least you need a half hour, maybe an hour of bright light a day. When we did the first experiments, we were using 3 hours, and it drove people crazy to sit there that long. But we think a half hour to an hour is probably enough for most people.
Sure. What about the certain foods that you say can also trigger you to be happy?
So one of the things we notice is that in other forms of depression, people frequently lose weight and don't eat. But in seasonal depression, it's much more common for people to gain weight and to crave sweets and starches or carbohydrates. And one of the things about carbohydrates is that they stimulate the brain's production of tryptophan, stimulate the brain's production of serotonin, which is the main chemical we think is involved in seasonal depression. So we thought that some of this weight gain was really an attempt on the part of our bodies to compensate for the fact that there wasn't enough serotonin around. And so there are certain foods, turkey, meats, dairy products, eggs, that have a lot of tryptophan in them. And so by taking in more tryptophan, your brain's able to make more serotonin.
Well,
I thought tryptophan puts you to sleep.
Yeah.
Well, we have some sad family members here that have some questions. I'm going to go to you, Shirley.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, believe it or not, I am affected by lack of light. When I go to my house and it's just not the winter, it has to be bright, or I do become depressed. So I turn on all the lights, so I have a high electric bill. I need help.
Is it working?
It's working.
So we thought that only seasonal depression was sensitive to light, but there have been a number of studies over the years that say that other people with depression and low energy will respond to light. And it kind of makes sense. We're diurnal animals, meaning we're awake during the day, and so the brighter the light is, the more active we tend to be. And so there are people who are not seasonal but are just very sensitive
And
to
it's
light.
the same thing as plants, too.
Yeah.
Plants will not thrive unless they have full spectrum.
Yeah.
We're the same.
All right. Well, wonderful. Well, and I mean this sincerely, I'm very sad that we didn't get to talk about your sad situation for the rest of the day.